Je suis très honorée d'être ici parmi
I'm
vous
very
aujourd'hui
honored to
pour
be here
représenter
today
une femme
to
dont
represent
le
a
visage
woman
vous
whose
êtes
face
familier.
you're
Il
maybe
s'agit
familiar with.
d'Asia Bibi.
I'm talking about Asia
And
Bibi.
you can put the picture of Asia Bibi on the screen, please. Cette mère de famille de 42 ans
This
ne peut
42-year-old
malheureusement pas
mother
être là parmi
can
nous
unfortunately
aujourd'hui
not be here
parce
with
qu'elle est
us today
enfermée en prison
because she's confined in prison,
en attendant sa
awaiting her
condamnation à
death
mort
sentence
par pendaison.
by hanging.
Son crime,
Her crime?
avoir bu de
Having
l'eau
drunk water
tirée d'un
from a
puits.
well.
Cette histoire
This
peut
story
sembler
may seem
invraisemblable,
implausible,
et pourtant le
yet the
cauchemar que
nightmare
vit Asia
experienced
Bibi
by
depuis
Asia
maintenant
Bibi
plus
and
de
her
10 ans
family
est
for
bien
over 2
réel.
years is real.
Alors nous sommes au
We are in
Pakistan,
Pakistan province of Punjab.
La vie
Asia
d'Asia Bibi
Bibi's
a
life
basculé
shifted in
un
June
14 juin
14th,
2009.
2009.
Ce jour-là, elle
That day, she
participe à une
participated in a
cueillette de
gathering
fruits
of berries
parmi des compagnes de
among
cueillette,
other women,
musulmanes. C'est la
Muslim
seule
women.
chrétienne
She was the only
et
Christian,
elle participe à cette cueillette pour gagner quelques
so
roupies.
she was participating this
La
to earn
chaleur
some
est
rubies.
suffocante, nous sommes au mois de juin, il fait 45
Heat was
degrés, le
suffocating,
travail est
45
éprouvant.
centigrades in
Et
the
comme les
shade.
autres
The work was
femmes, Asia
demanding, and
Bibi
like other
décide
women,
de
Asia
se
Bibi
servir un
decided to
verre
get a
d'eau
glass
de
of water
commun,
in the community's
puis
well,
un autre.
and then one more
Mais
glass.
au moment où elle replonge
But when she
certains balles
plunged
dans
her
le puits,
cup,
une
a
femme
woman
lui dit
shouted
qu'elle vient de
that she
souiller
had
l'eau du
dirtied
puits,
the well
parce qu'elle est une
because
sale
she is a
chrétienne.
dirty Christian.
Les autres femmes
Others
s'enchérissent,
went
lui
farther
reprochant
by
d'avoir rendu
criticizing
cette eau
her for
haram,
making the water
c'est-à-dire
haram,
impure
that
à la
means
à la
impure and
consommation
therefore
pour les
unfit for
musulmans.
consumption for Muslim.
En se servant
Using
dans
this
ce
well,
puits, Asia Bibi n'a pas
Asia
fait de
Bibi was not
provocation.
provoking anyone.
Elle a travaillé
She had
plusieurs
never,
années comme
she
aide
worked for many
ménagère chez des
years
musulmans et jamais
cleaning for a
elle n'a
Muslim
fait
couple,
l'objet de
and
telles
she
insultes.
had never been insulted like that.
Abasourdie, elle décide de se défendre.
So she decided to defend
Et elle
herself,
répond à ses
and she
accusatrices,
answered her
Je ne crois pas que le
accusers.
prophète
I do not believe that the
Mohammed
Prophet
partagerait
Muhammad
cet avis.
shares the same opinion as you.
La colère gronde de plus
Anger
belle
was
chez
brewing
ces
among the
femmes
Muslim
musulmanes
women
qui lui
who
jettent la
literally
pierre
and
au sang
figuratively
propre
cast a
sans
stone at her
figurer
because
et qui lui reprochent
the Christian
à
Asia
Asia Bibi,
Bibi
la chrétienne,
was
d'avoir parlé au nom
speaking
du
on
prophète.
behalf of the Prophet.
Et soudain,
And
le
suddenly,
blasphème
the
fuse.
word blasphemy
Au
fused.
Pakistan,
In Pakistan, when you're accused of blasphemy, if justice does not kill you, it's the street that does.
alors pour s'en sortir,
To cope, Asia
Asia Bibi
Bibi
n'a qu'une seule chose à
has
faire.
only one option in that
Ces
case.
femmes lui demandent de
These
se
women
convertir
ask her
à la
to
religion
convert
musulmane.
herself to Islam,
Mais elle s'y refuse.
but she
Elle tient
refused
tête
and
et elle
she
explique
was stubborn
que même
and
si elle
explained that
respecte
even
l'islam,
though
elle
she
préfère
respects Islam,
garder sa
she
foi
prefers
catholique.
to keep her Catholic faith.
Pleine de haine,
Full of
les femmes
hate,
demandent alors
the women
à
of the
l'autorité
village
du village, qui
asked the
s'appelle le
mullah
d'aller porter
to
plainte
go file a
au
complaint
commissariat du
against her
district contre
for the
Asia
crime
Bibi
of
pour
blasphemy
délit de
at the
blasphème à l'encontre
precinct
du
of the
prophète.
district for having talked against Muhammad, the
Sans être
prophet.
entendue, ni
Without
assistée
being
par un
heard
avocat,
or helped by a
Asia
lawyer,
Bibi est immédiatement
Asia
jetée
Bibi
en
was
prison,
immediately
puis
sent to
condamnée à
prison
mort au mois
and
de
then
novembre
condemned to
dernier
death
pour blasphème,
last June for
délit de
blasphemy
blasphème à l'encontre du
for the
prophète.
crime of blasphemy against the
Aujourd'hui,
prophet.
Asia Bibi est la seule femme
Today,
de
Asia
ce
Bibi is
siècle
the only
condamnée à
woman
mort.
of this century
Son
sentenced to
avocat a
death.
fait appel
Her
de la
lawyer has
décision,
appealed the decision,
mais la date de ce nouveau
but as
procès n'est
of
pas
today, the
fixée.
new trial
Alors,
is
pour la
not
justice
been
de
fixed by
Lahore.
the High Court
Asia
Justice
Bibi
of
risque de
Lahore.
mourir
Asia Bibi
assassinée à tout
is
moment
likely to die at any time now,
d'épuisement,
I-
parce qu'un
of
mullah
exhaustion,
de Peshawar
or
a mis sa tête
because a
à prix
mullah in
en prendre
Peshawar has
5 000
promised a
euros au
reward of
Pakistan, ce qui
5,000
représente une
euros,
fortune,
which is a
à
fortune in
quiconque
Pakistan,
tuerait Asia Bibi.
to anyone who would kill Asia Bibi.
Ces conditions
Her
de
conditions
détention
of detention
depuis 2 ans maintenant
since 2 years
dans la prison de
in the
Sheikhupura
Sheikhupura prison
est atroce.
are
Il n'y a pas
atrocious.
d'autre mot.
There's no other word to
Elle vit dans une
describe.
cellule
Asia Bibi lives in a
microscopique
microscopic
où elle peut
cell
toucher de part
where
et
she can
d'autre
touch the walls
sa
on
cellule
either side
en
of the walls
écartant
by
ses bras.
spreading her arms.
Sans fenêtre,
There are
elle
no
ne voit
windows.
jamais le
She
jour
never
ni la
sees
nuit.
the day or night.
Elle s'ankylose
She
parce qu'elle n'est
stiffens
pas autorisée
as
à
she's
faire
not
la
allowed to
promenade avec
exercise,
les autres détenus.
like with the other
Elle est
prisoners.
totalement
She is
isolée,
completely
ne parle à
isolated,
personne,
not
elle
allowed
est
to talk to
brimée par
anyone.
ses
She's
gardiens
bullied
qui
by her
l'insultent
guards who
quotidiennement
insult her
et la
daily
traitent comme un
and
chien.
treat her like a dog.
Elle fait ses besoins
She
à
has to
l'intérieur
relieve
de la
herself
cellule,
inside
à
the
même le
cell,
sol, elle
on
vit
the
au milieu
ground.
de
She
ses
lives in the
excréments,
midst of droppings,
mange
eating
ce
and
que la
cooking,
nourriture que son mari lui
eating the
apporte
food that her
pour
husband
éviter
cooks
le
and
risque
brings her in
d'empoisonnement.
order to avoid
Elle
poisoning.
meurt de chaud la plupart
She
du temps
dies of
dans
heat
ce
most of the
qui est
time
devenu aujourd'hui son tombeau
on what has become her
infesté de
tomb,
moustiques
infested
et
with
de
vermin and
vermines.
mosquitoes.
Elle a froid pendant
She
la saison
suffers
hivernale,
from the cold during
et
the
lorsqu'elle
winter,
tombe malade,
and when she
elle n'est
falls
pas
ill,
soignée.
she's not treated.
Le cas d'Asia
Asia
Bibi
Bibi's
a permis
case
de
has
mettre la
shed
lumière
light
sur cette
on the law of blasphemy that throws thousands of innocent people in prison without religious discrimination. It is fundamental to note that in Pakistan, it's mostly the Muslims who are the first victims. The law against blasphemy is unfair. It can settle neighborhood disputes or eliminate a rival on a simple verbal accusation. In the case of Asia Bibi, women wanted to revenge for an affront because the Christian stood up to them. In Pakistan, 3% Christians are generally considered second-class citizens and must keep a low profile so as to not get into trouble. Convictions have also increased for blasphemy, have multiplied since 2001 for Christians, especially because Christians are suspected of supporting the West in the war waged by the coalition in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, charges against the alleged blasphemers are increasingly absurd and encourage the excited crowds to take the law in their hands. Only a year ago, a Muslim doctor was accused of blasphemy and jailed after he crumpled a business card bearing the name Mohammed. In Pakistan, 99% of Muslim citizens are named Mohammed. So what can we say to the Pakistani civil society that asks yourself if you commit a crime, every time a newspaper paper is destroyed with the name Mohammed, which is written everywhere. So on this drawing, on this image, you will be able to see that out of 1,061 blasphemy charges since 1986, 456 are Ahmadis. The Ahmadi are Muslims considered to be like a sect in Pakistan. 132 are Christians accused of blasphemy, 21 Hindus, and 452 Muslims. The drama Asia Bibi is going through today is not a conflict of a religion against each other, but the problem of a law that violates fundamental freedoms of citizens. Historically, the law of blasphemy dates to 1885. It was the British who registered it in the Indian Constitution, but at the time of partition with India in 1947, the founder and first president of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, removed this law from the Constitution of Pakistan, for Pakistan was to be a secular state. But in 1986, when a dictator arrived in power, General Zia-ul-Haq, he reintroduced this blasphemy law in the Constitution, hardening and strengthening the penalties to defend Islam against all offenses. Today, this law of blasphemy has become the worst instrument of religious repression that exists, and it's a formidable weapon for the Islamists in Pakistan. Officially, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is a secular state. All the religious parties, with the exception of the Muslim League of Nawaz Sharif, are in favor of religious neutrality. The current president, Asif Ali Zardari, elected by popular vote since 2008, also called for religious tolerance. But this is just a front speech. Even though Pakistan looks like a democratic secular country, in fact, it is the fundamentalists who have taken power as hostage. We had a perfect illustration in January. Pakistani politicians who were aware of the unfairness and injustice of this law attempted to abolish it. Deputy MP Sherry Rehman advocated and tried to amend this law in parliament, but the parliamentarians fell under the pressure of religious parties like Jamaat Islami, who demonstrated by the thousands in all major cities of Pakistan by promising chaos if this law was amended. Meanwhile, two leading politicians were killed for having made publicly the defense of Asia Bibi. One was a Muslim and one a Christian. Salman Taseer was the Muslim governor of Punjab. The fanatics did not forgive him for going to support Asia Bibi in jail and to say publicly that the law of blasphemy was not serving Islam. He was riddled with bullets on January 4th in the heart of Islamabad, by his bodyguard, who that day became a national hero. His son was kidnapped several weeks ago by the fundamentalists, so that the government releases from prison the murder of his father. Shahbaz Bhatti was the Christian minister for minorities. He fought for the amendment of the law and denounced the injustice Asia Bibi lived. He was killed in his car last March by the Pakistani Taliban. I suggest you watch this little story that I made the day of the funeral last March 2nd at Islamabad. It was on the day of the funeral of Shahbaz Bhatti.
The pain of a mother who's just lost her son. The emotion was palpable in Islamabad's Fatima Church, where Pakistan's international Christian community gathered to pay homage to Shahbaz Bhatti, the murdered Pakistani minorities minister, the only Christian in government and a man who fought tirelessly to reform Pakistan's blasphemy law, alone among the Pakistani political class fighting for this cause when he was killed by the Taliban. Alone too on the day of his funeral, Pakistan's president and ministers failed to attend the ceremony. The only member of government to show any solidarity was the Prime Minister.
He was fighting for this cause. I'm very grieved, and I also, on behalf of the people of Pakistan and the government of Pakistan and from my political party, I convey sorrow for the loss of a great leader, a friend, a colleague, and a parliamentarian.
Following the assassination of the governor of Punjab, Shahbaz Bhatti is the second high-profile politician to be killed for defending Christian woman Asia Bibi. She's facing the death sentence after being found guilty of blasphemy. She continues to protest her innocence from inside prison. Shahbaz Bhatti had visited her on several occasions and was helping her husband and children. They too have received death threats. But Bhatti wasn't deterred.
Christians in Pakistan are very concerned about that, and I'm receiving a lot of letters, a lot of calls, and after the appeal of the Holy Father, the Pope Benedict, this issue of the Asia Bibi and blasphemy law became well known to everywhere.
Today, Bhatti's brother says there is still a battle to be fought.
He was the burden for the oppressed people, those who have no voice, and he was the voice of them. And we believe that we should continue his struggle. He gave us light, and this light will be light all over the world.
An outpouring of grief for a man who gave his life to defend a political cause. With the death of Shahbaz Bhatti, Pakistan has not only lost a man of principles, but one of its pillars of democracy.
Chérie Rehman, la députée qui avait proposé l'amendement de cette loi est encore en vie, mais elle a écopé d'une fatwa et vit reclus dans sa résidence à Karachi.
Recluse at his residence in Karachi. Oscar Wilde said, "When the law is not strength, it is evil." And as long as the politicians continue to be walled in silence, the fundamentalist ideology will rule by terror. But we all know that they are defending Islam is far removed from this great religion. On Surah number 5, verse 32, the Quran teaches that whoever kills an innocent is killing all of humanity, and whoever saves a life saves humanity. Asia Bibi is innocent. The Pakistani government knows this, but does nothing for fear of reprisals. By refusing to act and making the necessary reforms, the Pakistani state is an accomplice of the fundamentalists, even though Pakistan has ratified in 2010 the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This international commitment is not consistent with the preservation of the crime of blasphemy in the body of law in Pakistan. Since last June, Asia Bibi is the author of this book, Blasphemy, reflecting her ordeal. It gives us, from the depths of her cell, a poignant story and sincere, without hatred, malice against, or rancor against Muslim or Islam. Illiterate, like most than half of the Pakistani population, Asia Bibi wrote this book with her voice. I have been the pen. As a journalist and privileged witness of what is happening around the world, I see that consciousness is sometimes encountered. With Asia Bibi, we wanted to put the pen in the wound, to shake the souls and consciences, alert, hoping to save the lives of hundreds of victims of this law. I lived the last 3 years in Pakistan. I was a permanent correspondent for French television channels. The first time I heard about Asia Bibi was in the local Pakistani press, the day after her death sentence there, almost a year ago. I made different stories for television news with the support of my friend Shahbaz Bhatti, who allowed me at the time to meet her family who was under his protection. But the stories don't have the same impact as a book. And if this book exists today, it is thanks to a Parisian editor who you met this morning, who from Paris was hit by this tragedy that is being played 10,000 kilometers from his office. Philippe Robigny, the editor of Blasphemy, is here with us in this room. Without him, I would not be able to be here today to talk about Asia Bibi, and without the existence of this book, she would probably have no chance of escaping death. When Philippe Robigny contacted me in Islamabad last December, he asked me if a book could help Asia Bibi in her fight, in her struggle. With her family and Shahbaz Bhatti, we quickly concluded that yes, the situation was completely frozen and only a book could move the lines. But for the testimony of Asia Bibi to be heard beyond the walls of her cell, he had to fight against the Pakistani authorities who did not want her story to be known outside of Pakistan. I have never met Asia Bibi then in jail, despite my repeated requests. But through her husband, Ashik, who visits her once a week, I was able to communicate with Asia, forging a bond of trust and ask my questions through him. For 2 months, I went every week outside the center to collect from a prison Ashik's responses to my questions. When I finished the manuscript, it was translated and read by her in Urdu by her lawyer in jail. Asia Bibi has validated every page of the book. Now that her book has been translated into several languages, Asia Bibi feels less alone. She hopes that the international community will not remain indifferent. In Pakistan, no one dares speak now without risking death, but we can speak. Asia Bibi knows I'm here before you today and thanks you for your interest in her tragedy. She would like that her example helps other people to other victims of this injustice, unjust law. I talked to her husband last night and he told me, or he is telling you, that if all the international community puts pressure on the Pakistani government, there is a chance she will get out alive. We know already that France is ready to welcome them, Asia Bibi and her family, as political refugees. Asia Bibi has become the symbol of blasphemy. The fanatics have made out of this mother an affair of state, so that this barbaric law is maintained in Pakistan. Her husband and 5 children are also affected by the curse of blasphemy. They are all threatened with death, live hidden, change home regularly, and are unable to leave the house or work. The children who suffer from the absence of their mother no longer go to school for safety reasons. The youngest is only 9 years old. Thanks to this book that allows them to receive royalties on sales, Asia Bibi's family is now able to eat properly. One of her daughters with a disability can now benefit from a costly treatment. Pakistan is a great nation. Its people are friendly, wonderful, practicing a modern form of Islam and open to others. I can witness of this. Of the 180 million people, the extremists are only a handful, but by creating terror, they have been detrimental to the development of the country. I am pleased to be able to hear that civil society can express itself without putting themselves in danger. If we can liberate Asia Bibi, we will help others wrongly convicted by this law of another age. I will end with the words of Martin Luther King: "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice around the world." Now that you know the story, Asia Bibi's story, I hope we'll make the dream of saving her. Thank you for her and her family.